in a small-town theater.
Creepy and weird and frightening.
Actors are disappearing.
She was supposed to meet her boyfriend, and she never showed.
And the stage is set for murder.
Everywhere this man has gone, there are people that are dead.
How will the curtain close on a shocking mystery?
Well, he hasn't stopped killing. He's still doing it.
I'm M. William Phelps, investigative journalist, and I have an obsession. Serial killer, cold cases.
Now, nearly 10 years later, investigators say they still need the public's help.
For me, it's personal. My sister-in-law was murdered, and her killer has never been caught. These killers are still out there. Their victims deserve justice. And just one new clue could make all the difference. I don't have a badge, but I do have something the cops don't have. Someone who understands the dark mind of a murderer.
As I started killing again and again, I saw it as a purpose.
Because he is one. You know, by now, I shouldn't be surprised by the places that Dark Minds takes me. After all, serial killers are where you find them. It's just that sometimes their audacity takes my breath away. It's one thing to hide among the masses, faceless in a huge metropolis. It's quite another to operate for years in a place like this. The Twin Cities of Lewiston and Clarkston, on the border of Idaho and Washington State, a long way from anywhere. It's quiet, remote, small town USA. And like any small town, everybody knows everybody. There's connections. That's the key to the mystery that's brought me here. Those connections. Who knows who? And where does a vicious serial killer fit into it all? There are at least 5 deaths in some way connected to this case. Mostly young women. One of them was Jackie Miller.
4'10", dark auburn hair, really dark green eyes, darkish skin like me. She wanted to be an artist. So, you know, let her go for it.
Jackie Miller, nicknamed Brandy by her friends and family. In 1982, she is 18, sharing an apartment in Lewiston with her stepsister, Kristina Nelson, age 21. Christina is taking art classes at college and dreams of becoming a vet. The sisters both love performing, acting in student plays at the Lewiston Civic Theater. On a Sunday night in September, Kristina and Jackie decide to take a quick walk downtown. The next day, Jackie's mom, Jerry, gets a message. The girls didn't make it home.
She was supposed to meet her boyfriend, and she never showed.
So what does a mother do?
We went to different places and looked, and we didn't have a clue at where to start. Not a clue.
She looks everywhere for her baby girl, Jackie, and for Kristina. Weeks pass, but she won't give up.
So you do what you can do. You try to think of as many places to look and hope. That's what you do. And you keep doing it, you do it over and over and over.
The families are in limbo. And eyes start to fall on them.
Well, we go home. There's nothing else we can do. And then we sit. It's a waiting game. And then we have detectives come and talk to us and question us because we're suspects now.
And get this straight. These are not the kind of young women who just run off.
I think the store was like 4 blocks away. How unsafe can that be? That's what you'd think anyway.
But on that night, a safe small town became a dangerous place. While family and friends hope and pray for the best, Kristina and Jackie will not be coming home.
Murder in a small town is disastrous. I mean, it brings complete terror.
Criminal profiler John Kelly has seen what murder does to a small community too many times.
People walk around looking over their shoulder all the time. This isn't the big city. This isn't supposed to happen here. We don't have all this murder and mayhem here. We don't have a predator among us here. Guess what? Yes, you do. You have a predator among you. What bothers me about it, the predator himself, he's getting off to this. He's in control of the whole town and all the people in it.
As detectives begin investigating the disappearance of Jackie and Kristina, they get a lead. The route they would have walked that night took them right past this spooky-looking building, the Lewiston Civic Theater. Jackie and Kristina had spent many hours here, acting and working on student plays. On the night Jackie and Kristina disappeared, a man was seen entering the side door of the theater. And guess what? He's missing too. Who was he? And what was he doing there?
There's been lots of rumors over the years about the theater. It's an old Gothic building that was once a church, and it has a lot of nooks and crannies and crawl spaces and things like that.
Jackie Nichols is a detective with the Asotin County Sheriff's Department. Like all the cops in this region, she wants the Jackie Miller and Kristina Nelson case solved. Does this theater hold the key?
I always hope for a resolution. I always hope that I will find answers, and I want to find the answers for the families.
When this case began, answers were in short supply. Kristina and Jackie disappeared without a trace. Totally out of character. Were they lured into the theater by a mysterious man?
He did his laundry at the theater because they had a washer and dryer there. He had worked as a janitor there. He was familiar with the theater.
The man is 35-year-old amateur actor and musician Stephen Pearsall. He's also reported missing by his family.
Because he disappeared the same night, it was definitely considered that the girls went with him or that he could have done something to the girls.
Hey, Steve. Show Brandy Jerry Lewis.
Stephen and the girls all knew each other from the theater.
Well, both the girls were very interested in acting. And they knew Stephen. Stephen was a very harmless person to them. I mean, he's a very quiet man, very quiet man.
Maybe. But where is Stephen? And why has he gone missing at exactly the same time?
He did his laundry there. So I'm thinking maybe they went there with him or something. I don't know. I don't know how they ended up there. All I know is that between the apartment and the grocery store, or the grocery store and their apartment, they vanished.
Three people have vanished. No bodies, no signs of violence, not a lick of evidence. Just missing or murdered. And then the mystery deepens. Police discover that there was one other person at the theater that night. And he hasn't gone missing.
What he said he supposedly did and what he saw didn't make sense.
Just take a look at this place. I'm exploring the Civic Theater in Lewiston, Idaho, and trying to blow the dust off its secrets. Something terrible happened here on the night of September 12th, 1982. Stephen Pearsall, Jackie Miller, and Kristina Nelson all went missing. They can all be placed in or near the theater that night. And so can one other person. He's a regular at the theater, an actor and musician. He also helps with the sets, which is why he was there that night.
Let's go back to the beginning.
Detectives haul him in for questioning. Did he see anything? Did he hear anything?
Okay. I spent the day at the theater with Steve Pearsall. And we were working on the pirate ship. We finished up around 9.
He gives a pretty specific timeline about what he did that night. That he was at the theater and he was working, that Stephen Pearsall came there and worked with him, and that Stephen left around 9.
Then I went and had some dinner at a pizza place. I watched a movie on TV.
And that he went back to the theater and that he was doing some more work, and that he injured himself and went and laid down in the green room area, and that he fell asleep.
And before I knew it, it was morning.
Whatever happened in the theater that night, he says he slept through the whole thing. But there's something about this guy's demeanor that puts the cops on edge.
He was kind of challenging or antagonistic.
Retired Lieutenant Alan Johnson also worked on this case.
What he said he supposedly did and what he saw didn't make sense.
For legal reasons, I can't name this man, and he's never been charged. But he soon becomes an official person of interest.
You just get the feeling when you talk to people of they're telling you the truth or they're just shining you on.
After 2 police interviews, he clams up.
He refused to do a polygraph test, and at a certain point, he retained an attorney and refused to provide any more information to law enforcement.
There's another thing that catches the attention of the police. This man who slept through the attack, they know him. He was on their radar in another missing persons case. Now, is that a coincidence? Or a connection? That's what I'm about to find out. The story begins 3 years earlier. April 28, 1979. The sleepy town of Lewiston has come to life after a typically cold, long winter. The county fair is in town. And 12-year-old Kristina White is thrilled.
Kristina had her bicycle with her, and her plan was to ride her bike home later after she had helped her friend get her friend's horse ready for the horse show.
But it's hot out, and at her friend's house, Kristina starts to feel the heat.
She had suffered from heat stroke in the past, and that was a particularly warm spring day. And she called her mom and said,
Mom, it's me.
you know, I'm not feeling well, can you come get me?
I just put your sister down.
And her mom told Kristina to get a cool washcloth and try to cool off.
Look, just put a wet washcloth on your neck.
Walk towards the house, and the mom would watch for her down the street.
All right, I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.
Kristina's mom waits and waits. Then her mother's instinct kicks in, and her heart starts to beat a little faster.
The mom watched and waited, and Kristina never showed up. She began to get worried, so she began asking people, have you seen Kristina? And no one had seen her.
She raises the alarm. Police in the local community swing into action.
They walked up to where the fairgrounds were and just were actively searching, driving, looking, trying to find any sign of her. They searched through the night. One of the local people here had an airplane, and they searched with that.
But Kristina White can't be found. She'll never be found. No body, nothing. So how does all this connect to 3 people disappearing from the Civic Theater 3 years later? It's our person of interest. The guy who slept through what happened in the theater that night in 1982.
I would be reluctant to do so.
The guy who refused to cooperate with police. He was the last person to see Kristina White alive.
It was a aha moment, I believe, for law enforcement.
I'm right on the border of Idaho and Washington State. The twin towns of Lewiston and Clarkston. Home of happy country people. And just maybe one serial killer. I look at this place. That country feel out in the middle of nowhere. The canyons, that brown, dry, brittle grass along the hillside, the coyote willow. Last thing on anybody's mind here is evil. The devil. But he's been here. I can feel it. In September 1982, the town of Lewiston woke up to 3 people missing, presumed dead. Only 3 years earlier, the neighboring town of Lewiston had also lost one of its children, 12-year-old Kristina White. Then, investigators find a connection between the two cases. One man who was at the scene of both crimes. He was never charged, but when Kristina White went missing in 1979, she was last seen at his house.
He was the last one to see her at his house, admitted in statements, providing a towel to her and sending her on her way home.
And once the search for Kristina begins, the man is more than ready to help.
I'd like to be involved.
Our person of interest kind of volunteered to lead a search party.
Where have you been looking?
And was kind of leading, in their opinion, away from where the search should actually be conducted.
Inserting themselves into a police investigation. That's a classic trait of some serial killers. But you know, it takes a certain type to roll upon a scene with cops and help solve the mystery.
We're still getting organized, sir.
Who the hell does that? It's a fair bet that my colleague, criminal profiler John Kelly, will know the answer. What about him injecting himself into the investigation? What does this say about how he feels inside?
He gets pleasure and excitement out of pulling the wool over other people's eyes and manipulating them. He feels he's bulletproof. He feels he's much smarter and much more intelligent than they are, or anybody else in this whole small town.
These are the kinds of questions that make one person such a valuable insight for me. Raven. He's an actual serial killer. So he's been there, and now he's paying the price. Did you or would you insert yourself into one of the investigations of your murders?
I didn't want people to know who I was, so I wasn't really trying to inject myself into anything.
Right.
But there were times when I felt that I was steering the authorities in a proper direction. I would tell lies about who I am, so they wouldn't be following me. Serial killers like to watch the crimes develop. And we get to know kind of how the cases are developing from watching more and more cases of ours. And we decide as we go along what is a good way to move to the next person or to cover our tracks. In some cases, circles like that the killer just run away. We don't want to be around when the hell it happened. This guy wants to be there. How he feels he's in control by being there.
It's a frightening thought. Serial killers learning firsthand from the very guys who are hunting them.
I could show you some places to look.
We're bullies. That's what we are. We like to be in control of whoever we're in control of.
Be it the victim or the community or law enforcement.
It makes no difference. It's all the same to us.
The Kristina White case was ice cold by the time 3 people vanished from the Civic Theater 3 years later. But the fact that our person of interest was very close to both cases, is that a coincidence that's too big to ignore?
I think that's when they first realized that this person was also most likely connected to Kristina White's disappearance. When the 2 girls and Stephen disappeared, it was a aha moment, I believe, for law enforcement.
So in 1982, police begin to take a closer look at this person of interest and quickly find he was well known at the Civic Theater.
He worked on the sets, he acted in plays, worked on the rigging for various shows. Almost everybody describes him as being odd or different. Some describe him as being kind of a fun person with a good sense of humor. And then other people have described him as being creepy and weird and frightening.
And soon people start to wonder about another young woman who went missing in the area. Kristin David, age 22. She'd also been involved with the Civic Theater. Kristin was last seen in 1981 riding along a country road 17 miles from Lewiston.
And she was riding her bicycle from Moscow to Lewiston, which she did regularly. It wasn't unusual for her to do that. And she disappeared.
One week later, fishermen have their lines in the Snake River just outside town when they make a shocking catch. A headless torso in a garbage bag. The remains of Kristin David. Is she yet another victim of the same serial killer? At the time, there wasn't enough evidence to prove it. But more bodies would soon come.
He thought it was a deer skull. It was a human skull.
It's March 1984. 1.5 years since 3 people disappeared from the Lewiston Civic Theater in Idaho. A teenager is collecting cans by the roadside.
His hat had blown off, and he was chasing his hat. And he saw something on the ground, and he thought it was a deer skull. He had a closer look. It was a human skull. And that was Kristy.
As a kid, no one dreams that someday she'll be doing a TV interview about the murder of her cousin and trying to catch her killer. But that's where Gloria Boberts finds herself today, remembering Kristina Nelson.
Kristy was about 5'1", long blonde hair, very, very, very cute. $1 million smile, sweet smile, smile of innocence. She had a great outlook.
Kristina's remains were found alongside her stepsister at the bottom of this hill, about 30 miles outside of Lewiston. For many years now, Gloria has worked tirelessly to keep this case alive. And she has one suspect, our person of interest.
They knew him. They were connected through the theater to him. Every one of these people is connected by that theater. Everywhere this man has gone, there are people that are dead. They're missing.
A length of rope was found with Kristina and Jackie's badly decomposed bodies. Police speculate that the rope comes from the Civic Theater. I've got questions for my right-hand man, criminal profiler John Kelly. Why were these young women found together? Why leave the rope at the dump site? And where is the other person missing from the theater that night? Stephen Pearsall.
I think as long as they can't find his body, they can never truly eliminate him from the case.
And you think that's a plan of this killer?
I think that was in this killer's mind because he made it very obvious where the other two girls were found bound together. But Stephen Pearsall's never seen again. Well, that could possibly lead suspicion for one to think, hey, these two girls were there, Stephen Pearsall was there, Stephen Pearsall disappeared. What did he do to these two girls before he left?
Stephen Pearsall. He's the other mystery at the center of this case. I need to get a sense of him. Could he be a suspect?
He was over 6 feet tall, and he was rather thin, and he loved music. He played in the school band and played a clarinet.
Stephen's stepmother, Chris Pearsall, has been kind enough to talk to me.
He was not a very outgoing person unless he was acting.
Stephen was a former Air Force corporal. But Chris tells me he wasn't really the military type. Stephen was a mild, gentle dreamer.
Not the kind of person that would hurt anyone else, physically or emotionally. He just wasn't that kind. He enjoyed being at the theater a lot. He also would go there and practice his flute or help paint the backdrops and things like that. He seemed happy because those were the things he liked. He liked to do that.
The idea of Stephen Pearsall being a suspect in this case is inconceivable to those that knew him. And, like the missing girls, he wasn't the kind to run off. Once Stephen disappeared back in 1982, his parents soon became certain that they wouldn't see their son again.
And my husband always thought that he was murdered also, and the reason for it was he was not a person to stay away from the family for very long. He was a very family-oriented person.
So Stephen wasn't the type of guy who would just leave his life?
No, he wouldn't. He left everything in his apartment. His money, his everything.
So what might have happened that night when Stephen arrived at the theater? Chris agrees with the theories of the police.
He walked in on the person that they suspect having done it. That he came in when something was happening that he knew wasn't right.
Maybe he tried to help the girls, his friends.
Hey! He was very soft-hearted, and he liked people. And if someone was having trouble, he was there to help. He just had a very good nature.
That cost him his life.
The man was doing something that wasn't right, and therefore attacked Stephen as well.
And a man who spread darkness everywhere he went triumphed over a man brimming with kindness.
He liked to make people laugh, and he liked children, and it's too bad he never lived to have any of his own.
One of the keys to this case is finding Stephen Pearsall. He's not a suspect. I've spoken to his stepmother. You heard what she had to say. The guy's a victim. But without a body, there's always going to be that lingering doubt in a jury's mind. Find that body, remove that doubt, and we're going to take a cold case and suddenly heat it right back up. what might have happened on that night in 1982 in the Civic Theater. It begins with Jackie and Kristina taking a late-night walk to the grocery store.
What do you think happened to them at that point, in between the apartment and town?
I think they met up with somebody that they knew from the theater, and they trusted, and they went into the theater. That's what I think.
There's a path running alongside the theater right here. And guess what? The girls probably took this path on their way to the store that night because it's a shortcut. And right behind me, there's a door into the theater. And I'm wondering, was the killer waiting for them right here that night? Did he lure them into his clutches? Or did he know them? As for what happened inside, there's no physical evidence to tell us exactly what occurred. But Jackie Miller's mother, Jerry, is haunted by a profound and disturbing dream.
Jerry, what do you think happened to the girls?
I saw, and I don't know if you want to call it a dream or what. Jackie was tied up sitting in front of the stage. Stephen Pearsall, I don't know if he was dead or not, was laying over in this area. And I saw the monster murder Kristin in front of Jackie. And Jackie's eyes were this big.
It may be just a dream, but that's a terrible image for a mother to live with until we get some answers to this mystery. Everything in these cases keeps connecting back to the theater. And the shadow at the heart of this theater is the constant presence of our POI, an actor, a performer, a guy who loved to take center stage, a guy who loved to put on a show. But the burning question has always been, what else is he connected to? Well, I've done some searching. And you know, you won't believe what I found. How many does it take before it's not a coincidence anymore?
Well, for me, it stops being a coincidence at 1.
The Civic Theater murders here in Lewiston, Idaho, have gone unsolved for over 30 years. But don't think for a minute that they're cold. Not with detectives like Jackie Nichols chipping away at the case.
Well, I've worked on missing persons cases, and they're, to me, the most frustrating cases because we don't have the answers, and people look to us for answers, and when we don't have them, it's really difficult.
Jackie believes a man who was heavily involved in the theater is a very strong person of interest in the case. And once she dug into his past, she got a shock.
In 1972, there was a young girl in California. She was on the boardwalk in Santa Cruz. And she argued with her boyfriend. She walked away down the beach, and she was never seen again.
The girl is Antoinette Anino, age 17. The following morning, her body washes up on the shore. naked. Two days later, her corpse lies in the Willow Glen mortuary in San Jose. At 5 a.m., a neighbor notices a young man acting suspiciously outside the mortuary. And guess what? That young man is our person of interest.
2 nights later, he was caught breaking into the mortuary, which housed her remains.
Freeze!
And he had a knife and a camera with him. And her body was the only body in the mortuary that night.
He is charged with burglary and pleads guilty to a lesser charge. But what I want to know is why? Why the knife? Why the camera? How did Antoinette and Nino really die?
At the time, they ruled it a drowning/asphyxiation death, and because she had made suicidal type comments in the past, they believed it was a suicide.
Do you think it was a suicide, Jackie?
No, I don't believe it was.
How come?
Well, there's a few reasons. Why did her nude body wash up on the beach? I don't generally think of people who commit suicide of stripping before they do it, but also because of the involvement of the person of interest with her remains 2 days later.
Very strange.
Yes.
And there's still one more death that this person of interest was oddly close to, but never charged with. Claudette Voliva.
She was a young woman who was found deceased in her apartment in Lewiston in 1987.
And what was the cause of death?
Her death was ruled an overdose, suicide.
And how is our person of interest connected to her?
He found her.
How many does it take before it's not a coincidence anymore?
Well, for me, it stops being a coincidence at 1.
7 people, missing or dead. Every case has a connection to the person of interest. Is it all a coincidence? He's never been charged, as there's never been anything solid enough to take to trial.
I believe that technology is what's going to help us solve these cases. With DNA, we're able to get profiles from smaller and smaller sources, and I believe that we will collect DNA, and that will be what finally solves these cases.
Let's hope the wait isn't too long. Because John Kelly thinks that whoever did these murders, this guy hasn't finished yet. Will he kill again, Kelly? Has he killed again?
He will kill again. He can't stop. He's so addicted to this powerful fetish. He can't give up these urges.
The fetish controls him, right?
The fetish is part of his ritual which controls him. He can't stop. Yes, he will kill again. Every waking hour is spent focusing on people because he's a predator. And the urges are gonna come up. And at some point, he has to make an abduction. This guy knows when people get up, when they go to school, when they go to work. I mean, this guy is very focused on information. I believe he feels he's smarter than everybody, that nobody can touch him. And you know what? He's batting 1,000. He's right. He's perfect. He's gotten away with all these murders, and nobody's picked him up.
The person of interest moved out of the area in 1999. He has never come forward to offer his DNA or try to exonerate himself regarding any of these allegations. I know someone who might know what he's thinking. Raven. Okay, Raven, listen, I got a question for you now that I want you to step inside your old self.
want you to go back to when you were ripping and running. What's he thinking right now?
If I was this person, I would think that I'd gotten away with it. But I'd be still on pins and needles at every turn. I would still be kind of cautious what was going on. But I would still be doing the same thing.
Will he risk killing again?
Well, he hasn't stopped killing. He's still done it. Serial killers are lucky. We get lucky one time after another time after another time. But we do the same thing still.
Lucky, huh? Well, some very tenacious cops are quietly watching and waiting for that luck to run out.
I think that he is probably a serial killer, and I think that serial killers do kill until they're stopped.
What would it mean to catch this killer, to you personally?
Personally, the biggest reward for me would be to have the closure for the families that lost their loved ones. That's the hardest part about these cases for me.
She was my kid and I loved her. She didn't deserve to die. She didn't deserve him to kill her. She deserved to be able to live. She deserved to be able to be here and continue to be loved by her mother.
Yeah, I believe this killer might be watching this show right now. Well, I got a message for him. You keep waiting. You keep low. You keep your fingers crossed day and night, because my gut tells me, right, that Judgment Day is coming. Those girls you murdered, those families you destroyed, they will have justice. I'm certain of it.